My name's Mickey Ryan. I was born and raised in North Lismore. I'm a descendant of the traditional owners, the Wable people of the Bundjalung Nation. My heritage is through my grandmother's lineage. I'm the son of Ellen Deasy, who married Ray Delbridge. I'm third born of six children. My mother was the oldest of many children to Christine Crummy, my grandmother, known as Jessie and grand to many. She married Roy Deasy, whom I never got to meet. I can go back further than this, but this is my adventures of growing up on our generous river. Historians state Captain Henry Rouse discovered the Richmond River on the 26th of August 1828 on his good ship the Rainbow and named it after one of his mates, the Duke of Stradbroke. But hey, the river was never lost. My people lived and survived with this truly generous river for thousands of years, long before Henry Rouse came along. Historians also state that William Wilson arrived on the riverbanks of Lismore in 1845 via the north arm of the Richmond River. His wife Jane named the place Leosmore after a place in Scotland meaning great garden in Gaelic. Of course it was a great garden, it was our Creator's creation, our Garden of Eden. They, the Wilsons, immediately grabbed 36 square miles of land as their property, 10 miles of riverfront. They wrote about the trees, thousands of years old, of course older than that, being cut down and burnt by the squatters to clear the lands for grazing their herds of cattle and sheep. Then came the cedar getters, cutting red and white cedars, rosewood, mountain ash and many other species of rare timbers, totally wiping out the big scrub. They say 2/3 of the colony's timber came from the big scrub. I sit down on the river bank and I dream of how it would have been before colonisation. Trees so high they reach the sky. Many species of wildlife and reptiles living in and around those majestic trees. Birds so plentiful they blacken the skies. The many colours they contrasted with the many shades of green. I dream of my people free to hunt and live where the seasons took them, living in harmony with nature. But the settlers did not see the beauty of the river, hidden with a canopy of trees, so rich and plentiful, so generous with fish, birds and vegetation. All they saw were the dollars, the greed and the raping and the taking of the great forest and fertile lands. They did not appreciate the beauty of our Creator's creation, our Garden of Eden. So sad. The river was the main artery of access to the big scrub and beyond, so Lismore was built on the river for shipping the mentioned timbers. Ocean-going ships and other crafts sail, rode, motored or steamed their way up the Richmond River from Ballina or Corrockeye to Lismore. The SS Thane was the first steamer to arrive in Lismore in 1865 and the last ship was the SS Wyangry. This ship weighed 1,068 tonnes. There was also a steamer which ran a daily service from Lismore to Ballina. It was 70 miles one way, took 7 hours and cost 8 shillings and 6pence. That's about the river. Now this is my story growing up on the Richmond River with my cousins, brothers, sisters and all the extended families of North Lismore. Firstly, I've got to say there were 6 floods recorded that entered the township of Lismore before I was 13 years old and 11 recorded by the time I was 21 years of age. Some floods were not recorded that entered the low-lying areas of North Lismore where we lived. Sometimes with these floods we had to pack up and move to higher ground like the North Lismore Public School in Tweed Street. I'd like to add, my mum carried me in the record flood of 1954, the year of my birth, so it seemed we were water babies from the start. Our swimming hole was called Sandy Point and it was well named as the sand stretched from the point down to the river towards the railway bridge, roughly 100 metres long. It was also known as Northy's Beach. It would be packed in the summertime. Most of the neighbourhood would be enjoying the river as not many people had cars back then to go to the beaches. It all started the day my Uncle Jerry swam me out to the middle of the river at Sandy Point when I was 4 years old and said, "Now get back to shore." So I dived to the bottom, which was deep and had a sandy bottom. I dragged myself along the bottom to the safety of the bank. From that day onwards, I felt I was connected to the river. We all learnt to swim at Sandy Point. It was one of our playgrounds, the other being the hill, which is Banyan Bagan, a sacred place for our people. As kids, we were not allowed to go over town, or for that matter, any of the bridges. So we stayed in North Lismore much of our primary school life. Maybe that could be ingrained from the 20s and 30s when Aboriginal people were excluded from town by council policy. And it was also a known criminal offence for my people to speak their native tongue. So sad. No televisions or Xboxes back then. We were always told to get outside and play. So it was always the hill or the river. We were called the River Rat by other people, and very rarely did we go to the Lismore public bars. Only at school swimming carnivals did we go. I remember the water burning my eyes and turning my hair green. But compared to the river water being clean and alive, we could see each other underwater, no goggles, as well as the fish. We drank the water from the river. We would dive to the bottom to drink the coldest part when we could. Some weekends my cousins, brothers and others would go to Burry Creek. There would be 10 to 15 of us, all young warriors. We'd take our supplies of tea, sugar, flour, salt and fishing lines, which was fishing line wrapped around a bottle. Freshly dug milkworms for bait and plenty of stones to either throw or for the shanghais. No guns back then, only because we were too young. We lived off what we killed, and that's the way it is our way, eat what you kill. The river had a plentiful supply of food. There were mullet, perch, catfish, eels, turtles, flathead, bream, dogfish, the ancient herring with scales of silk, garfish and sometimes sharks too. They were not man-eaters, we hoped, the sharks. Uncle Johnny caught one on the Ned Kelly rod once. Well, I'm not going to say he near shit himself, but he dropped the rod and run. It was funny. Yeah. There was also ducks, water hens and many species of birds and ducks. Top-knot pigeons, blue jays, mulberry birds, red bills, not to mention the many parrots. After killing and plucking our kill, we'd get a green tree branch and thread as many birds as we could onto the branch and roast them over the hot coals. There were lots of hungry mouths to feed after a day of adventure on the river, so there were a few green sticks stacked with a variety of birds roasting over that fire at once. We also cooked our fish and bread over the coals as well. Ducks were hard to get throwing stones at them, but sometimes we would swim underwater through the willows and grab the ducks or water hens by the feet. Roast water hen and duck cooked over coals was yummy, but my favourite was the top-knot pigeon. My favourite fish is mullet, cooked anyway. Sometimes we would wrap mullet in paper bark, wrap this up in clay and put it near the coals till the clay was hard and the mullet was cooked. Yummy. We shared everything we caught. During the day sometimes we'd all run naked around the riverbanks, swinging out at trees, making out we were real Aboriginals. Night time sitting around the fire, frightening ourselves with great stories, was always on. Sometimes the older fellas would sneak up the river from home and frighten each and every one of us. Boys would be running and squealing, but not too far from the fire, of course. So funny and innocent, so beautiful looking back. Those were some of the happiest times of my life as a boy. We knew where the fruit trees were when in season, bush lemons, plums, mangoes, mandarins, locusts, bushnuts, grapes, and all. We didn't want for nothing up the river. It was our Garden of Eden, and we had many a good time up the river as we got older. Burry Creek was a special place for the Northies. It was a place where we felt safe and connected. I found out years later that my great-grandmother was born at Burry Creek. So special. I feel I've experienced a spirituality and connection with both the land and the river from those days as a boy. We would not go swimming in certain areas by feeling like we shouldn't be there, and we were right. And every Easter the mullet would run from the sea up the river and creeks to spawn. Honestly, we would stand on any bridge in Lismore and see mullet for as far as you could see both ways. They would run for weeks and months. It's truly a great memory I have, the mullet running, as we would say. We were told that the leaders of the army of mullet were the bull-nosed mullet, making a safe path for the egg-carrying mummies. Then the hard-gut mullet, they were the warriors bringing up the rear or protecting their future. When the mullet run, it was time to go jagging. Jagging was illegal, but that didn't stop us from catching our seasonal tucker or fat mullet. Jagging mullet didn't need no bait. All we needed was some bamboo or cane with 50-pound break and strain line and a sharp jag, which is a 3-barbed hook. And we always went throwing the jag over the mullet, jagging them at will. Another way we caught mullet was by light, either with matches or a torch and a boat. Many mullet were caught and shared with our community. At times the fishing inspector would sneak up on us. If he caught you, he would throw the fish in the river and cut you a line and jag and throw them in too. Didn't matter to us, we would just dive and grab those precious jags back. I can honestly say he never caught us. We would jump in and hide in the willow trees, which were always so green and thick. It was as if they were swimming in the river with us. So those inspectors had no chance of catching us once we hit the river. When the rains came, the river rose and ran faster. We would make canoes out of sheets of galvanised iron. We'd get the tar from the main road, which was Terania Street, boil it down and patch up the creases where we bent it. Our oars were palings found laying around. Another boat was made with the use of an old car bonnet turned over, but they were heavy for us to carry to the river. Looking back, it was dangerous, but boy did we have some fun, and no one got hurt. And then there was Hector the crocodile, a bit of Lismore history. Hector was on show to the Lismore Primary School, North Lismore Primary School and others, but Hector escaped and entered the river. My sister Mara and I were walking the iron bridge from north to south when we spotted a turtle drop off a log. Mari thought a lizard attacked it, but it was Hector. So we alerted the police, but they did not believe us until we showed Ray Hoare the different looking lizard. Well, he alerted the police of the crocodile, and Hector made the headlines. The next day the riverbanks were lined with big game fishermen from over the other side of town, with full roasts on big shark hooks. There were men tying whole lamb and steer livers onto hooks. We would sit on top of the bridge laughing at the funny goings on. No one ever did catch Hector, and I forgot to mention, when he escaped he was 15 to 18 inches long. There were many sightings of Hector over the years. There was a boat that would come up to Lismore from Corrockeye every day picking up cream from the dairy farmers, delivering it to the Norco factory, then returned to Corrockeye dropping off the empty cans. We called it the cream boat and hitched rides many times to Corrockeye. They'd tow us a long lane on car tyre tubers riding the bow waves. One day the cream boat skipper pointed to that crocodile Hector, sunning himself on a log. He was about 6 feet long. He was about 6 feet long then, and I was not the only one to witness him. That was about 3 to 4 years after his escape. On we travelled to Corrockeye, on the deck of the boat of course. Then we would hitchhike back to Lismore, barefooted to Lismore along the hot roads. Frogs Hollow was a camp up past the Atatlo Club. We would swim there from Sandy Point. Our first stop, swimming to Burry Creek. I remember the old people eating long worms called cobra, supposedly the best hangover cure and a strong aphrodisiac. I could not bring myself to eat them, so I don't know if they worked. 2 river barges also operated on the river, one either end, to dredge the silt and sand washed down the river during flood times. Whoops. It seemed to help the river flow, and it really was deep in places. The river seemed to run faster and it was a lot cleaner. Maybe the many willow trees that line the river banks did help to filter and clean this vital river. After a flood, the river would be back to normal in short time back in the old days. Today it takes a lot longer to recover, it seems. The 1974 flood washed away most of the remaining willow trees, and we also know the fish were plentiful prior to this flood, but seemed to disappear once the vegetation was gone through erosion. The water quality seems worse than it was. Through my eyes, the river has deteriorated since I swam and drank from it. It seems the Lismore City Council and Rouse Water have neglected this river for far too long. It is underutilised, going to waste. I did go fishing at Burry Creek when I came home. We fished for 6 hours and didn't lose a bait. I did see a lot of carp destroying this once generous river. So sad. This river needs revegetating with shrubs and the beautiful weeping willows urgently before it is lost. We may have been poor as children in materialistic things, but we were so rich in nature. And that's my story. Thank you for all listening.
Very good. Whew. Yeah, river man.
Yeah, river rat. What's that, bud?
He was longer than 15
When he escaped, he was about that big. Yes, and when I seen him, he was about 6 foot long, 4 years later. He was that big. Never found him, aunt. They never found him. He's still in the river. They brought him over to North Deb and he was all picking him up like a little, like a goanna. Yeah, when the heck to the crocodile. He was in the river.
He's still around.
He's still here.